And here's another way in which human beings are weak. It's demonstrable, I think, at least demonstrable by the standards of people who think there are such things as demonstrations, that human rationality is very weak. Right? We don't know half what we think we know. And if certain very powerful arguments are correct, as I fear that they are, knowledge of anything is going to be extremely difficult to come by. This seems to be built into the human predicament. God provides us with the prospect for enlightenment. Right? God provides us with the prospect that maybe our intellects have been shaped and created in such a way that we might apprehend some of the deepest truths about the universe. And so there are nice epistemological benefits to be had from God's creative activity in shaping human consciousness as well.
I don't know, so far this seems to be going like, this seems to be along the lines of what we want to exist more than anything about what does exist.
Okay.
As far as God goes.
Right.
Like, yeah, we may want to know, we may want to gain knowledge and enlightenment.
And we might want some being to do it for us.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's actually there.
That doesn't. That's right. And so it falls short of a proof for the existence of God.
It's there to seem like it's a coping mechanism for the realization that we are, finite, mortal, little things.
Let me try an argument then. I said that arguments never persuade anybody, but they might help you to think in a particular sort of way. Another epistemological benefit of believing that God exists is you get this really good true belief that God exists, which is true. So that's good. But those who study logic will recognize that I'm begging the question. I'm assuming very big, and I'm supposed to be providing evidence for it. Okay, let me try an argument then. Let me try a moral argument for the existence of God. But I think it might be better to think about it as a set of considerations which might incline you to think that it's not entirely unreasonable to suppose that God exists. The argument's going to go. It's going to go like this. Okay, first principle. I can be morally obligated to do something only if it's possible for me to do it. Right? I can be morally obligated to do only what it's possible for me to do. Right? So suppose right now that there is on the far side of the earth a child suffering, and that child's suffering could be alleviated if someone would just take the giant rock off of it. Okay? Sorry for that. That's terrible image. It was just what occurred to me. There's a rock on a kid somewhere, and the kid's under the rock, and the child is suffering as a result of the rock on the kid, and the suffering could be alleviated by the rock being taken off the kid. Am I obligated to take the rock off the kid?
Well, if he lives long enough, you can take an airplane.
I mean, maybe if it doesn't crush him before I get to the other side of the earth, maybe I should drop everything and buy a plane ticket.
That's assuming you could possibly be aware of that in the first place.
Or that I'm aware of it and taking care of it outweighs the sort of obligations that I already have to other people and all kinds of other complicated. Okay, let's change the example. Suppose that I'm Christopher Reeve, right? Christopher Reeve, and I'm a quadriplegic, right? And I'm sitting, and my wheelchair is broken, right? I can't make my wheelchair move. I can just sit there. And a child falls in a swimming pool right in front of me. And the child could be saved from drowning if somebody would pull it from the pool. Is Christopher Reeve morally obligated to pull the child from the pool? Look at it this way. Suppose the child drowns. Would Christopher Reeve be morally blameworthy for not pulling the child from the pool? But the answer is no, and it looks like this principle that I'm about to write on the board, which we can abbreviate as ought implies can, explains why. I can be morally obligated to do something only if I'm able to do it. I can't be morally obligated to do things I can't do. What's most uncomfortable about however, that we can do a hell of a lot more than we actually do. There's a lot we can do that we don't. When Sally Struthers comes on TV in the middle of the night and says, you can give a few pennies a day to alleviate suffering in the other part of the world, I think part of the reason a lot of us changed the channel is because we recognize that's right. There really are things we could be doing that make us uncomfortable. Okay, so first principle, ought implies can. Right? We can be obligated to do only what we can do. Second principle, we're going to abbreviate this as agape. Agape. We are morally obligated to serve others. It's part of our moral obligation that we serve other people, that we give consideration to other people, the right kind of consideration to their interests and needs, that we maybe short of self-sacrifice, but certainly more than just that we ignore their interests altogether. Okay? So we're morally obligated to serve others, but
Self-sacrifice comes in varying degrees, doesn't it?
sure, I sacrifice a part of myself if I give somebody a quarter for a cup of coffee. Because that's a quarter I could have used to buy myself a cup of coffee. Or if I give a quarter a day, I mean, money goes a lot further in the third world. If I give money to a charitable organization, they really are able to buy a lot of food and provide a lot of medicines to people who are genuinely impoverished and suffering. And, I really have to think to myself, I mean, I'm kind of guilty about buying this book now. I got it pretty cheap, but I got it for $20, and $20 would have alleviated a lot of suffering. People really got about that money. Well, it's not so bad that I'm going to send it back, but I'm feeling a little bad. So self-sacrifice doesn't have to mean, sacrifice of one's life, right? Or sacrifice above and beyond the call of duty, sort of Medal of Honor kind of sacrifice. But we're morally obligated to give significant consideration to the interests of others. Now, here's where I'm going to slip in the principle that I suspect most of you are going to object to, and maybe is that we have this moral obligation, right? We have this moral obligation, which means that we can, if you take it with this principle, it means we can satisfy this moral obligation, but we can only do it with God's help. We can only live up to agape, that's going to be an abbreviation. We can only live up to our self-sacrificing moral obligations with God's help. These considerations taken together seem to show that God exists.
What's the justification for number 3?
Goes back to the first principle that I announced at the beginning of the discussion. We are by our very nature. It's sort of an original sin.
See, that's why.
It doesn't have to be Calvinistic, but it just has to. Calvinism is one way of making sense of it. Right? It's the idea that we are by our very nature. If it's just left up to us, we're by our very nature radically selfish.
I think it's bogus.
Think that's not true?
Because that's where a lot of the arguments seem to hinge on when people are trying to convert me. And I just don't know that. That are just innately evil.
Evil is such a hard word.
Or you just innately selfish.
Could we? Yeah, I mean, evil connotes sort of, wanted